I was 6 when the Emperor claimed my name. The hive sky glowed red that morning, the color of rusted metal and old blood. They called me gifted. The word meant doom. Agents came before sunrise, red hoods, respirators, auspex coils humming. My mother tried to hide her hands so they would not see them tremble. My father said nothing. When the door opened, the smell of incense and ozone filled the room. They asked my name. I answered. They marked my forehead with ink that burned like acid. 12 of us left the hive block, 12 witchborn. The crowds parted as we walked through them. No one met our eyes. Some prayed, others spat. A woman crossed herself and whispered that the black ships were hungry again. The ship waited at the docks, a vast shadow of metal and sanction. Its hull bore the aquila and the sigil of the Astra Telepatica. I remember the engines, low and endless, like the breathing of a god that never slept. Inside, everything smelled of oil, disinfectant, and fear. A woman in black robes processed us one by one. Her voice held no emotion. Your former life is terminated. You belong to the Emperor. You are Psyker designate MX379. She looked at me as though reading a report, not a soul. Delta-level potential, useful. I did not yet understand what useful meant. The journey blurred into pain and silence. Null iron chains bit through skin until thought dulled. Without them, voices came, soft at first, then roaring. They promised freedom, power, warmth. They lied in every tone of kindness. When the ship reached Terra, I had forgotten sunlight. The Scholastia Psychana stood like a tomb built before memory. Towers of black stone swallowed light and gave none back. Inside, the air tasted of ash. The first overseer we met had no eyes, only smooth skin where eyes should be. He told us most would die before the first year ended. Those who live will envy the dead, he said. Your suffering is a tithe for mankind. The first night I heard a child weeping in a nearby cell. By morning, silence. They said the warp had taken him. They said it was necessary attrition. Each day began with the prayer of containment. 300 verses whispered into the cold floor. I am the vessel, not the power. I am the servant, never the master. By the 100th recitation, meaning dissolved. Only sound remained. Training followed. We sat in circles, null collars humming. An instructor placed a feather on the floor. He said, move it, but do not burn, freeze, or crush it. I tried. Fire answered, green and screaming. Faces formed in the flame. 2 instructors died before containment. They locked me alone for 7 days. The collar turned high enough to black out sight. When they released me, my hair had gone white at the roots. The instructor's only words were, try again. Years blended into punishment and prayer. From 12 children, 4 survived. I learned to move the feather, light the candle, freeze the cup. I also learned what happens when focus fails. One student, Ak, touched another mind without permission. The screams lasted an hour. They kept him alive long enough to show us what failure looked like. When the sisters were done, he was ash and echo. We learned that mercy is waste.
By the 2nd year, they called us tools. Control was no longer enough. We were to weaponize obedience. Instructor Kane taught biomancy manipulation of living tissue. The Emperor demands efficiency, he said. A wounded soldier is wasted potential. We practiced on servitors first, then on prisoners. The first time I stopped a human heart, I vomited. The 20th time, my hands no longer shook. Instructor Vale taught fire. Her jaw was mechanical, her voice a series of clicks. Flame is faith, she told us. Pure, unreasoning, total. We conjured fire in airless chambers until our skin blistered. Divination came last. Instructor Heimlin, blind and scarred, warned us, the warp hears every question. It always answers, and it always lies. When I opened my mind, I saw futures folding like broken wings, cities burning, stars falling. I learned to look sideways, never directly. It kept me sane, was something close to it. After 6 years, they said I was ready. They were wrong. I was attached to the 117th Cadian Regiment under Captain Lorick. He looked at me the way one looks at a loaded weapon with no safety. Follow orders, he said. Stay under guard. The rebellion on Calibra had turned half the planet into a shrine to chaos. They needed a psyker to see what artillery could not. In the command center, Lorick placed a shard of ore before me. Came from a captured courier. Tell me what hides beneath. I removed my collar. The world opened like a wound. The shard dragged me inward, tunnels, chanting, a tower of flesh and steel pulsing with unholy rhythm. At its heart, something stared back. It noticed me. Pressure crushed thought. A voice without words flooded my mind. See, know, yield. I reached for the null rods. Pain exploded. Then nothing. When I woke, blood filled my mouth. Lorick stood over me, pistol ready. Status. I'm in control, I said. He believed me. He shouldn't have. Epsilon 9 burned for 3 hours. Orbital lances turned the complex to molten glass. The rebellion shuddered, but did not die. Lorick called it victory. I called it silence before the next scream. 3 days later, he sent me back into battle. A sister of silence walked behind me, her null field pressing like cold iron against my skull. I welcomed it. The whisper from Epsilon 9 had not left. It waited, coiled in the dark corners of my mind. At Gamma 12, we advanced through fog and ash. Artillery thundered, guardsmen charged. I felt their fear, their hope, the faint pulse of belief that the Emperor still watched. Then the whispers grew louder. Fire them, burn them, free them. I clenched my teeth until blood ran. The sister turned toward me. She saw it too. The shimmer in the air, the distortion of the veil. Her hand went to her blade. I forced the voices down. The null collar screamed against my skin. The battle ended with the enemy dead and half our company burned. They said the explosion came from a fuel line. I said nothing. I woke later in a Medicae tent, restraints biting my wrists. Inquisitor Havelock stood at my bed. His robe smelled of sanctified oil and dust. You were touched, he said. Yes. Are you still? I hesitated. I serve. He studied me for a long time. We will see. The Emperor's light reveals all things. They took me to an isolation cell lined with copper and wards. Days passed.
I recited containment litanies until my throat bled. The voice inside me whispered of freedom, of stars without pain. I learned that faith is not belief, it is refusal. Now I sit in the dark, writing this report with hands that tremble. Somewhere above, ships leave Terra for wars that will never end. Somewhere below, children recite the same verses I once did. They will suffer. They will die. Some will serve. If these words survive, let them be warning. The Emperor protects, but his protection is fire, and every flame casts a shadow. The chamber was smaller than I expected. No windows, no sound, only the hum of field generators and the slow drip of recycled water somewhere in the dark. Inquisitor Havelock stood before me, hands folded behind his back. His armor was plain, functional. The aquila on his chest was worn to the metal. "Report," he said. My voice cracked on the first word. "I was deployed with the 117th. The mission failed." He did not answer. Instead, he turned to the scribe beside him. "Begin transcription." The servo skull clicked to life, lenses whirring. A red beam passed across my face. Havelock stepped closer. His eyes were sharp and old, the color of iron before rain. "Tell me about Epsilon 9. The words hung in the air like a blade. I told him about the shard, the visions, the tower of flesh and steel. I told him about the voice that saw me. I left out the part where it still spoke when I closed my eyes. He listened without interruption, hands still behind his back. When he finished, silence filled the room again. The servo skull floated closer, recording the emptiness. "Did it speak your name?" "Yes." "What name?" I hesitated. "The one I had before Terra." His expression did not change. "That name is gone. If you heard it, something remembers you that should not." He took a step forward. The scent of his armor oil reached me, metal, incense, and sanctity. "I will ask you once more, are you corrupted?" The truth trembled on my tongue. The voices whispered from the edge of thought, warm and patient. "Say no, he wants you afraid. Say no and live." I said, "I don't know." That made him pause. An honest answer. Rare. He turned to the Sister of Silence standing at the door. "Increase the field." The air thickened. My thoughts splintered under the weight of the null field. The voices faded into static, then vanished. For the first time in months, the silence was total. Tears fell without my willing them. Havelock's voice came through the pressure like something distant. "You weep when freed from their touch. Interesting." He lowered the field. The voices rushed back. "We could end this. He doubts you. He wants you to burn you." I clenched my fists until nails drew blood. Havelock circled me like a man studying a weapon with a cracked casing. "Your resistance is unstable, but so is your faith." He gestured to the sister. "Bring the relic." She placed a small cube of black stone on the table. Runes pulsed faintly across its surface, ancient and cold. Havelock looked at me. "Focus on this. Tell me what you see." I hesitated. "What is it?" "Something that belonged to one who fell. If you are pure, you will see stone. If not..." He didn't finish. I reached out. The surface was colder than vacuum. The moment my skin touched it, a pulse rippled through me. The chamber vanished. I was standing in the ruins of Calabrana again. The tower still burned. The air shimmered with screams that had no mouths. In the distance a figure watched me, tall, robed in shadow, face hidden by light that hurt to see. It spoke in my voice, "You never left." When I looked down, my hands glowed with the same sick light that had devoured Epsilon 9. Then Havelock's voice cut through it, sharp as a blade. "Withdraw!" The vision shattered. I was back in the chamber, on my knees, smoke rising from my fingertips. The sister moved to draw her sword, but Havelock raised a hand. "No." He crouched beside me. "You touched the stone and returned. Few do." He studied my eyes for a long time. "What did you see?" I swallowed. "Fire." "Was it yours?" "I don't know." He nodded slowly, almost sadly. "Then perhaps the Emperor is not yet done with you." He stood, motioned to the scribe. "Seal this record under Ordo Malleus designation. Classification pending." As the servo skull powered down, Havelock leaned close. His voice was barely a whisper. "Do you still hear it?" The truth was a knife I couldn't drop. "Yes." He looked at me for a long time. Then he turned away. "You will be reassigned to controlled isolation. 2 litanies per hour. No unsupervised sleep. If the voice returns, write its words. If it goes silent, write that too. Either way, I will read them." He walked toward the exit. The sister followed. Before the door sealed, I heard him murmur, "If he's lying, the Emperor will know. If he's not, then we are already lost." The door closed. Darkness settled again. The silence lasted 1 heartbeat. Then, faint and patient, the voice returned. "He doesn't understand. You never lied." I pressed my forehead to the floor and whispered the only prayer I still remembered. "I am the vessel, not the power." The air pulsed, warm and familiar. "Yes," the voice said, "you are the vessel, and I am full." The walls groaned, the lights dimmed. Somewhere above, alarms began to sound. I laughed softly, the sound breaking in my throat. "Am I damned?" The voice answered, gentle as sleep. "You are chosen." The light flickered. Then everything went quiet again.
The cell they gave me was a cube of stone and warded copper. No light, only the dull hum of the null field that pressed against my skull like an iron hand. I counted the seconds by the rhythm of the generator. 1 pulse, another. The sound became my heartbeat. They said isolation would help me stabilize. I knew the truth. Isolation was a test. They wanted to see what followed me back from the warp. The first day passed in silence. I prayed until my throat bled. The litanies came without thought, words drilled so deep they were no longer mine. I am the vessel, not the power. I am the servant, never the master. The air stayed still. For a moment, I believed the voice was gone. On the second day, the silence began to breathe. I heard it behind the hum, soft, patient, almost human. I kept my eyes closed. The sound moved when I did not. I told myself it was the machine. Machines always whisper if you listen long enough. They fed me through a slot in the wall. The food tasted of dust and metal. The sister of silence who delivered it never spoke, only watched. Her presence crushed the air. When she left, the cell felt wider, thinner. The hum returned to its rhythm. At night I dreamed of the relic Havelock made me touch. The cube opened like an eye, and inside it was fire, not bright, but black and slow. The fire breathed. When I woke, my hands were shaking. My fingertips smoked. By the fourth day, I had stopped sleeping. The voice came again, quieter this time, as if speaking through glass. You are safe now. You are home. I answered before thinking. No. The whisper sighed, amused. Then where are you? I pressed my palms to the floor, repeating the catechisms until my voice cracked. The hum of the null field grew louder, angrier, as if it too heard. The air thickened, the walls pulsed. The sister came again, checked the readings, left without a word. When the door sealed, I saw her shadow linger longer than she did. It smiled. By the seventh day, the whisper had learned my rhythm. It waited until I finished praying, then echoed the words back in perfect imitation. I am the vessel, not the power. Hearing my own voice from the dark broke something inside me. I tried to scratch prayers into the walls with my nails. The stone cut deep. When I looked again, the words had changed. They read, "The vessel fills, the vessel waits." I told myself I was hallucinating. The mind invents faces in the void, but the blood on my fingers was real. Time lost meaning. The hum faltered. The lights flickered once, twice, then died. The darkness that followed was complete, so heavy I thought it might have mass. I whispered, "Havelock." No answer, only breathing, slow and close. Something moved across the floor, dragging metal against stone. I could not see it, but I felt the air shift, and a faint light rose from the walls, like veins beneath skin. Runes glowed, one by one, then went out one by one, as if swallowed. The null field failed. The whisper returned in full. You see, he left you here, but I stayed. I felt warmth on my face, like sunlight filtered through blood. A hand, unseen, touched my shoulder. For a heartbeat, it felt human. Then it pressed harder, pushing through flesh into thought. Memories broke loose. Terra, the black ship, the Scholastia, every punishment, every prayer, all burning together until only ash remained. The whisper spoke again, no longer gentle. He fears you. They all do. But I know you. You are the vessel. The walls groaned, the air shimmered. I smelled ozone and old incense. My mouth filled with the taste of copper. I screamed until the sound became light. Then silence. When I opened my eyes, the cell was whole again, the wards unbroken, the hum steady, but something had changed.
The light came from nowhere. My body left no shadow. I heard footsteps beyond the door, voices, orders. They were coming to check the pulse reading. I looked down. The line of blood I had drawn into the floor now formed words I did not remember writing. The Emperor knows his own. The door opened. The sister entered first, her null field pressing down like winter. Havelock followed, data slate in hand. He looked older, tired. He said, "MX 379, are you stable?" I smiled. "Yes, Inquisitor."
He studied my face. His eyes narrowed. He knew something was different, but he could not name it. He ordered the sensors checked, the runes inspected. Everything read normal. No warp trace, no psychic surge. Perfect containment. He nodded to the sister. Record complete. They left. When the door closed, I whispered into the dark, "Did you see?" The whisper laughed softly, from everywhere and nowhere at once. Yes, and so did he. The hum resumed its rhythm. The cell glowed faintly. I folded my hands, bowed my head, and prayed again. I am the vessel, not the power. The answer came like breath on my ear. No, my child, you are both. 3 weeks after the last report, the fortress shifted. No alarms, no breach. Simply a stillness that had weight. Servitors froze mid-task, optics blank. Vox relays filled with static. Astropaths in the upper choir stopped screaming mid-message. The sisters patrolling level 3 felt their null fields pulse and collapse into nothing. For the first time in centuries, the air tasted clean. Havelock recorded the event as Psychic Calm Anomaly, duration 12 minutes. He reviewed every feed frame by frame. The sensor showed no source, only the faint outline of a figure moving through the containment wing. No heat, no data tag, only shadow. Teams swept the corridors. Cell 7 Theta was empty. The warding runes remained intact. On the far wall, the blood-written words had spread, as if the stone itself had begun to bleed. The Emperor knows his own. Havelock ordered the area sealed. He returned to his chamber and dictated a final entry. If this is possession, it is subtle beyond measure. No malice, only silence. The warp is quiet, and I cannot tell if that is mercy or warning. Until the anomaly returns, the file remains open. He stopped the recorder, sat in the dark. Somewhere deep in the fortress, the generator slowed. The hum faltered. For an instant, the quiet felt holy. Then a single voice touched his thoughts, calm and close. You asked for silence. Havelock rose, hand on his pistol. No one was there. The Vox channels reopened. Choirs resumed their hymns. The fortress returned to order. But the Inquisitor knew something had shifted. Every sanctioned psyker under his command began to dream the same image, a vessel floating in darkness, filled with fire that did not burn. When questioned, none could describe whose face was inside the flame, only that it smiled. Weeks later, a transport ship leaving Terra reported an unauthorized transmission on their internal vox. 3 words, repeated once: "The vessel waits." After that, nothing. The Ordo archived the case under unresolved, silent protocol. The fortress still stands, the hum still beats, and sometimes, when the night grows too still, the sound changes. Not louder, not softer, simply different, as though the pulse beneath the stone is no longer the machine's. They called it resonance drift at first, a simple mechanical failure. But machines do not pray, and what the fortress heard was closer to prayer than noise. The first signs appeared in the choir vault. 40 astropaths seated in their steel thrones, heads wired to the beacon pylons, speaking with a single thought. For years they had screamed fragments of distant messages through the warp, chaotic, painful, endless. Then, one morning, the choir went quiet. No collapse, no panic. They simply stopped. Their pulses remained steady, breathing unbroken, but the air around them shimmered as though holding breath. When Havelock entered the vault, the smell of incense was replaced by something like ozone and rain. The lead astropath turned his blind eyes toward him and said, in a voice that was not his own, "Silence reaches all." Every monitor registered a heartbeat at that moment. One heartbeat. It matched the pulse of the containment generators. Investigators combed through data for hours. No psychic signature, no warp bleed. Yet the fortress changed. Scribes began to forget entire days. Candles refused to burn. Hymns, once loud enough to shake the halls, grew thin as if sung under water. The sisterhood increased patrols. Their null auras flickered like dying light. When one sister collapsed, her armor humming with residual energy, the Medicae could find no wound. She whispered only one phrase before losing consciousness. "He is still praying." Havelock ordered a descent into the sublevels where Cell 7 Theta had been. He took no guards, only a single servo lamp and a data slate. The lower corridors were colder than memory. Dust fell like ash from the ceiling. The walls, once lined with copper wards, now bore faint handprints in the metal, hundreds layered and reaching upward. The Inquisitor stopped at the sealed door of the cell. It should have been inert. Instead, the stone pulsed faintly with light, slow and rhythmic, the color of old fire. The words carved there had deepened over time. "The Emperor knows his own." Havelock placed a gloved hand on the mark. The stone was warm. For the briefest moment, he heard the hum again, the same low pulse that had once filled the psycher chamber. And beneath it, faint but indistinguishable, another sound. A breath. He stepped back, drew his weapon, and whispered a containment prayer. No answer, no echo, only his own heartbeat, perfectly in sync with the rhythm coming from the wall. When he returned to his quarters, he found a single parchment waiting on his desk. No seal, no origin mark. It contained one line,
written in blood-dark ink. You asked for silence. He gave it. Havelock locked the door, activated every ward, and sat in the dark until morning. He told no one. In the following weeks, the phenomenon spread beyond the fortress. Ships leaving orbit reported radio bands filled with low-frequency pulses matching the same pattern. Some called it interference. Others began to time their prayers to it. The Adeptus Mechanicus transmitted diagnostics for months, but could find no origin. Across multiple systems, psychers claimed to feel the calm. No nightmares, no warp storms, only perfect stillness between thoughts. The Administratum labeled it anomalous sector-wide dampening. The Ecclesiarchy called it the Emperor's breath. The Ordo Malleus called it unverified containment residue. Havelock called it what it was, a voice that had learned to whisper without words. He kept the original recordings locked in a lead vault. Sometimes, when he reviewed them alone, he could hear faint sounds under the data hum, breathing, heartbeat, the shuffle of movement. He listened for hours, hoping to catch a word. One night, he did. The sound was soft, patient, almost kind. Do you see now? Silence was never empty. He turned off the machine and sat still, watching the light fade. Outside, the fortress pulsed again, faint and steady, like something sleeping under stone. And in that moment, for the first time in his long service, Inquisitor Havelock did not pray. He only listened.